Hey, it's Metal Dave along with my co-host Jason McMaster, and welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today we are going to spend some time talking about one of the great record producers in the hard rock genre. Or actually, that's not even accurate. The guy's all over the map. His resume is pretty impressive, but he has done a number of records in the hard rock genre that we'll touch on today, and we'll touch on some others as well. That is Mr. Bob Ezrin. His career spans 4 decades, so he's done a ton of work, and we're going to focus on some of that in just a minute. But first, Jason, I know we're just coming out of this crazy winter storm here in Texas, and one of the things that I spent some time doing since I couldn't go anywhere, I was locked up in the house with no running water. I did have power, however, so I was able to spend some time. I stumbled on this film, and it was called The Sound of Metal. Have you heard about this?
About the drummer that goes deaf?
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't pressed play on it because I watched the trailer and I got bummed out.
It is a really, it is kind of a dark movie in some sense. It reminds me of almost like a foreign art film of sorts.
Most
It's not, yeah, it's definitely got sort of that vibe. It's not a big budget Hollywood slam bang kind of blockbuster movie. Not a lot of special effects, not a lot of big name actors. But I do believe it was nominated for an award of some sort. I don't follow movies that much, so I'm not familiar with the awards. Maybe a Golden Globe or something like that. But anyway, it's called The Sound of Metal, and it's about a guy who is a drummer in, I don't know why they call it metal, because the music to me doesn't sound very metal, but maybe it's just a generic term for loud music. But he and his girlfriend are sort of this rock and roll duo, and they travel around in this RV. It's real DIY, old school kind of thing. They're playing all these stinky clubs. And anyway, he realizes that he's going deaf. So much so that he can hardly hear at all. So he goes to basically find himself, I guess. They have to come off the road. He tries to find medical treatment for his hearing condition. It's super expensive, so he looks for alternate treatments, and he ends up at this place that it's sort of a rehab type place that caters to addicts. And this guy is a heroin addict who's been clean for 4 years, but he's still connected to that support system. And so he spends some time in this facility, I guess it's a facility, but it's not a medical facility. It's kind of a out on a farm kind of deal. And anyway,
rehab. It's like a get it together place.
Yeah, exactly. But it caters to people that are deaf and mute, and they all speak with sign language, so he has to learn all that. Anyway, long story short, it's a pretty interesting story. It's not necessarily a feel-good story. It's not a comedy. It's not a drama. It's just sort of following this guy through this time in his life when he loses his hearing, which is critical to him because he's a musician, and he learns to appreciate the silence. At the end of it all, the takeaway is he's been stricken with this medical condition, and he comes to terms with it, and he actually, I think at the end, almost comes to terms with it and recognizes it as being a very peaceful, tranquil sort of condition. And that's kind of what the people in the rehab place were trying to teach him. So it was pretty interesting. Again, like I said, kind of dark and almost filmed like an art film, but it's
film noir.
It's got a connection to music, and I thought it was really cool. I was trapped in the house, and I found it, and I watched it, and it was pretty entertaining. So
yeah, it's sort of on my radar. It comes across my screen, but I quickly get out of it. Like I said, I watched the trailer, and I wasn't impressed with the premise. I knew that it was going to go deep and get away from music, and it was going
Yeah.
to be more about his condition.
Right. Right.
This has been a spoil alert. Spoiler
Yeah. Yeah.
from
We
Matt
just
Dave and Jason McMahon. We just kind of gave everybody
ruined it for everyone.
ruined it for everyone. So we should do this again for another movie that I don't like.
Just ruin it for everyone.
Sure, why not? But I think that in favor of an idea like that, I think that it's a good idea.
Yeah.
When you think about musicians, hardworking musicians, or
Well, that was the kind of the thing that intrigued me because I've been to concerts all my life. All my friends are musicians. I could relate to it because we all, to some degree, have made our poor ears suffer over the years. So, and we've read about musicians that we love. I mean, Brian Johnson, we talked about him in a previous episode. He had to pull out of a tour, a major stadium tour, because he was in danger of losing his hearing. So, and we've all got the little ringing in our ear, and we've all stood too close to the speakers. So I kind of connected on that level because it's something I've experienced, not from the musician's standpoint, but from the person on the other side of the stage standing right in front of a speaker that's blowing my head off for, the past 40 years.
I'll play the redneck card. I was impressed with the title, The Sound of Metal, and then when I realized it was about a medical condition, I moved on. I wanted it to be, what, The Sound of Metal?
Yeah, the name's a little misleading. It's almost like somebody that doesn't, understand the different genres of music named it or whatever. And then I thought, well, maybe they're talking about the abrasive scraping sound of metal, not necessarily the genre of music. And whatever, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. If you're into music and you're a musician and you stood too close to speakers at some point in your life, you can relate to it. And I thought it was really well done. It's not the feel-good movie of the year, but I thought it was well acted, and I enjoyed it for an hour and a half or whatever it was.
I think that the idea being that you either do have a condition where you're going deaf that's from listening to loud music because you're in the business, or you are in love with the business and you're sure you're around loud music all the time, and then all of a sudden you have this condition that's could or could not be related to the loud music.
Yeah. So it was all those things, and something that certainly you and I could relate to, and I'm guessing almost everyone listening to this podcast can relate to loud music and the problems that can be associated with it. So today we are talking about Bob Ezrin, one of the great all-time record producers. I mean, the guy's had a career that spans, I believe, 4 decades. I can go back to the 70s at least and rattle off some albums that he's been involved with. He's had a hand in a very diverse group of albums, musicians, etc., touched on a lot of different genres. He may be best known for his work in the hard rock, heavy metal genre, which is what we'll talk about today. And we'll touch on some of the other stuff as well. But Bob Ezrin, if you don't know, turn over a couple of your favorite albums and surprise, you're probably going to find his name. So when's the first time you saw Bob Ezrin listed as a producer on the back of an album? Tell me what that album was.
That's way, way, way too easy. It was Kiss Destroyer.
Bam, same here.
So everybody who has, started listening to Kiss at an early age, and they ended up with Destroyer, that would have been in 76.
Right.
And God, surely you read the liner notes on your album covers.
Who doesn't?
Because you're old.
Yeah.
So if you didn't, it means you're not old. So that's it. That separates the men from the boys, literally.
The men from the millennials.
Yeah, exactly. So, he's been active since 1970. So I think that his discography is going to be huge because
Yeah.
it's going so far back, like you said.
Yeah.
He was working with so many different people by now that I think let's just stop for a second. People are going to trip out when we say names of albums, and we've already said Destroyer, but there's a couple of them up our sleeve right now that people are just going to go, oh my God, you're not kidding. No wonder you guys did a show on this guy.
Yeah.
We've yet to even get there yet. So
right.
Kiss Destroyer is 76. By then he would have been only doing it for about 5.5 years before he probably even sat down with Gene and Paul. Let's just play that card.
Yeah.
I really think that whatever it was he was doing prior to that must have made, Kiss intrigued with his style, his songwriting ability that needs to be completely underlined.
Yeah.
And the way he orchestrates music and the way that they are, get this, going to sound after they're recorded and mixed. The vibe of everything is going into the microphones.
Right.
And that's part of his expertise, as well as you're in the garage writing the song, building the car. You know how that he's a guy that knows how that car is it going to go fast, Bob? Is it going to go slow, Bob? Is it going to be the fastest car on the street? Is it going to be loud or is it going to be quiet? Is it going to be he knows everything because he's the engineer, he's the writer, he's the producer, he's involved in the mixing and all of the above.
Yeah.
When you're kind of like when you are the producer, you have all of those things going on the entire time, even if you're sitting at a piano or have a guitar, or you're just sitting there in a chair with a notepad listening to okay, guys, what do you got? And they play you a few songs and you go, yeah, that's pretty good. We can use the bridge. What else you got? It kind of turns into that. It turns into like, a dunking machine.
Yeah.
You put one up there and he throws a ball and dunks it down, or he saves it,
Yeah, Kiss Destroyer was the first time I saw his name as well, and he has sort of his trademark, at least on the albums that I'm familiar with. You use the word orchestrated. He's one of those guys who, at least in the sort of the hard rock context, is known for sort of. As you said, orchestrating, possibly layering, adding drama to songs, I think is sort of his. That's his calling card. Little bit of trivia about Kiss Destroyer and Bob Ezrin. Do you know? Well, of course you know the song "God of Thunder," and you hear those little kids talking on the walkie-talkies in the intro to that song. Do you know whose kids those are?
No.
Those are Bob Ezrin's kids.
Wow.
Yes.
I know that.
Those little voices that you've heard a million times since you were a teenager that intro the God of Thunder, those are his kids. And I read somewhere that it was just a last-minute decision to I think they were running around the studio playing on walkie-talkies, and Bob captured that on tape and thought, in some weird, twisted way, wouldn't this kind of be a bizarre, weird intro to the God of Thunder song? And it worked out great because it does make it a weird, bizarre intro, especially to a song like God of Thunder that's so otherworldly and weird. So, a little trivia there. Bob Ezrin's kids. Cool.
I never knew that.
Yeah. And speaking of Kiss, he also did the album The Elder, which, for better or worse, is also to his credit. We talked in a previous episode about underrated albums, and there's probably a lot of Kiss fans that have come to appreciate that album in hindsight. Just as many or more don't. But again, it was an album that was very conceptualized and orchestrated to a degree,
which makes it perfect for Bob Ezrin to be
right. Yeah. So yeah, the first time I ever saw his name was Kiss Destroyer, and we should talk about the elephant in the room here. Bob Bob probably made 10 fortunes for producing Pink Floyd's The Wall, one of the best-selling landmark albums of all time, and that's Bob Ezrin.
I was wondering how long you were going to sit on that.
Well, once we get talking about Kiss, it's kind of hard to shift gears, but there you go. Yeah, Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Yeah, that doesn't. What a game changer! It
Absolutely.
It was the midnight movie. If everyone's of a certain age, there was the midnight movie. In the olden times, we would go to the movie theater at midnight and see The Wall, and The Wall was a production that had Bob Geldof from the Boomtown Rats starring in it.
That's right.
He I don't know if his connection to the band members of Pink Floyd or even Bob Ezrin, if there's any ties there or not. Do you know of any ties?
I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was friends with Roger Waters.
Yeah.
I would imagine, both those guys are British rock royalty, so I'm sure they cross paths at some point. That might be the connection. But
when you think about the things like that are happening on Destroyer, like if you're a Kiss fan, all the Kiss fans out there, let's just put your nerd hat on and lean in right now, hard, lean in hard, and think with us really hard. You're not living under a rock. You've heard The Wall by Pink Floyd. Now think about Destroyer. Now think about The Wall. Think about Destroyer. Think about The Wall. Think about how the songs and the tones and the things that are interestingly weird about Destroyer, and then think about The Wall and how the songs are put together. I mean, God of Thunder, the intro God of Thunder, that little weird thing. And, he thought of that on the fly and put that in there. I guarantee the things that are weird that are in the background on Pink Floyd's The Wall were things that Pink Floyd needed that, they're Pink Floyd. They would have come up with something interesting anyway. But Bob Ezrin is the guy to do that kind of a thing. And I don't think that, I want to say it was kind of unprecedented for production, for someone who's an outside writer and producer and engineer to be hired by a band, because he also writes songs with the bands. He's the fifth Beatle. He's the guy that's coming in and like saying, what if you did this? And what it really kind of gives legs to the name producer. And when I think of producer, I don't think of an engineer as a guy who's setting up microphones.
Right.
Producer does a little bit of that, but there's way more involved. Yeah. And Bob Ezrin is one of those guys that, let's talk about this. Let's lean hard on Destroyer again. He co-wrote Beth, Kiss's only number-1 song that Gene and Paul are mad about. Why are they mad? Because they didn't have anything
to do
with it. They had nothing to do with it. They thought it was a throwaway song.
Yeah.
And Peter Criss had the concept.
It was a B-side.
He got in there with to probably the biggest Kiss song ever, Detroit Rock City. Is that correct? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Maybe Do You Love Me was, I think, also another sort of B-side to that.
Possibly, yeah. I know Beth was released as a B-side, and some DJ in the Midwest turned it over and made it a hit.
Well, there you go.
He started playing the wrong side of the 45 that was sent to him by Casablanca, and all of a sudden this throwaway track was the most requested song. It was a huge, huge hit. But and it's on the album that Bob Ezrin produced. And one of the things I was going to mention, especially with Kiss and Pink Floyd, it seems to me that Bob Ezrin is one of those producers that bands seek out because they actually want his input. he's not just a babysitter. They respect and appreciate his creative input and what he brings to the table, and they welcome it with open arms. And a lot of time, it's a badge of honor at this point to say you worked with Bob Ezrin.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of times bands and producers will butt heads, and the band doesn't want to listen to the producer, and the producer is finding the band hard to work with or whatever. And I think Bob sort of has a reputation as being a very strong-minded, creative type, but his ideas are almost, always heard, if not incorporated. They at least hear him out. And a lot of times, because they're willing to listen to him, and because he's just such a creative genius, what he brings to a band actually adds muscle to it and drama to it, and makes it something it couldn't have been without him. So
that's correct. I'm glad that you are bringing, you're adding to a couple of things that I said earlier that I didn't underline very well. And I think that he is part of the band's sound because the band wants him to help them.
Yes.
So, like with a tone, like the Wall has a tone.
Yeah.
And it's very memorable to, or comparable to, the tone that's on Destroyer, and almost recognizable if you know what you're really listening for.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that he is a songwriter and a composer, and works in all different levels of theater. He's a philanthropist. He's a winner of so many awards, and he's worked with all of your favorite bands that you don't even realize. They want him for the same reason that, Alice Cooper and Kiss wanted him. Dave, let's talk about Alice Cooper.
Yeah, I was going there next. I mean,
great.
Alice Cooper.
So real quick, let me set you up for it. I think that it was really early on Love It to Death album, 71, 70. If Bob's only been doing it since 70, that sounds funny when I say it. If he's only been doing it since he's only been doing it since 1970. That means that Alice was his first real project.
Probably one of the first, yeah. And Alice, at that point in his career, was still trying to develop his sound and figure out what kind of band the Alice Cooper band was going to be. They had those first two albums. I think they were working more heavily with Frank Zappa, and they were just as weird as you. I mean, a lot of people like them, but it wasn't what became the Alice Cooper sound. The Alice Cooper sound, I think, was built off of the Love It to Death record, which is Bob Ezrin.
Correct.
And again, it's a little more primitive sounding maybe, but you take a song like The Ballad of Dwight Fry, and you hear how dramatic it is, and it makes perfect sense that became Bob Ezrin's sort of calling card, is adding drama and taking left turns and maybe stretching songs out that would, left to the band's own devices, maybe it would have been a 3.5 minute radio single, but Bob sort of drags it into some other dimension.
He's got character actors in the song.
Yeah, exactly.
It's theater. He's doing theater in the studio. It's like I feel like I'm repeating myself from a prior episode, but Ballad of Dwight Fry is like listening to a movie while your ears are watching a movie.
It's very cinematic.
That's right.
Yeah. And that was just the start of it with Bob and the Alice Cooper band. He did the Killer record. He did $1 Billion Babies. He did Schools Out. I mean, all the classic.
He's the fifth Beatle, man.
He kind of, in some ways, Bob Ezrin did for Alice Cooper what Martin Birch did for Iron Maiden. It's like once they met each other.
George Martin for the Beatles.
Yeah, exactly. It's like once they met each other, they they built such a strong and productive and creative relationship that they went on to work on consecutive albums multiple times. And the whole first half of Alice Cooper's catalog, minus those first two albums that they worked with Frank Zappa, what would be considered the classic Alice Cooper band titles were them working with Bob Ezrin. And like you say, his ability to sort of develop characters sonically. When you work with a guy like Alice, who's all about having characters in his song, that partnership is naturally going to evolve into something really strong and a lot of mutual appreciation for each other. So yeah, his work with Alice Cooper is amazing.
Let's talk about real quick. Let's don't be done with Alice yet.
No, because we should go to Welcome to My Nightmare as well.
Yep, you're reading my mind. Yep. It's important to know that Ballad of Dwight Fry on the what would be considered in a lot of people's collections as the first Alice record, which it's not, but it's the first with Bob Ezrin, which, as Dave said, it really sort of sets up this theme and the sound and tone of what we loved about Alice Cooper. Now, I think it's the song Stephen.
Yep. Now you're reading my mind.
That is sort of the sister song to Ballad of Dwight Fry. Your ears are watching a movie. It's like a movie. He's talking to you. It's almost narrated.
Yeah.
And it's very, very important to realize that this is all going back to The Wall. There's character on that. You're watching a movie. I mean, dude, The Wall is a fucking movie.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it's also an album by Pink Floyd and Bob Ezrin. So
right.
That is a main point. What's your favorite song on here? Let's just be fans for a second.
Which album? Welcome to My Nightmare?
To My Nightmare, yeah.
Oh man, it's got so many good ones, but I've always been a fan of Cold Ethel.
Yeah.
I love the humor in that song. I love that it's rocking and it's twisted humor, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Ethel, of course, being spelled E-H or E-T-H-Y-L, meaning alcohol. And it's sort of a play on a girl's name. And he talks about making love to Ethel by the refrigerator light. And he's talking about sneaking downstairs in the middle of the night to hit the booze. And
in all these years, there's many, many people that, and you see the stage show and he's walking around with a man dancing with a dead mannequin.
Yeah.
I thought it was, necrophilia.
Yeah. Well, that's the
refrigerator. That's the double entendre there.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the magic of Alice Cooper.
Completely genius and freakish and actually feel cold when I listen to Alice sing the song.
Yeah.
And that's Bob Ezrin making that happen.
Little sidebar. I remember the first time I ever saw your band, Dangerous Toys, you were covering that song. Am I right?
Correct. That is correct. Man, that's a long time ago.
I know. I remember it. I remember it well because I couldn't believe I'm watching a band covering Cold Ethel. Oh my God. What are the chances?
I feel like we did that pretty good. We were all huge fans.
Yeah, and, obviously.
Eventually wrote a song and dedicated it to Alice, but the Cold Ethel is super, super fun. I think that there is some like sort of cheeky bubblegum, almost like glam rock, like similar to The Sweet or something has pulled that out, but like Department of Youth, where it's kind of like bouncy and has like a choir in the background and stuff like that. See, that's Ezrin. All of that stuff. I mean, there's like all the kids on the wall. We don't need. It's the same thing.
Right.
It's relative.
And the song Black Widow is another. I mean, that whole album, Welcome to My Nightmare, is, if I'm not mistaken, it's at least a loosely based concept album. It may be a full on concept album, but there is a cohesion and a theme that runs through the entire album. And at that point in Alice's career, he's no longer leading the Alice Cooper band. He is now Alice Cooper, the solo artist, and so he was kind of moving in a different direction. He was doing more complex arrangements and things where you would bring in strings and orchestras and choirs and things of that nature. So again, Bob Ezrin's stamp is all over that record.
Yeah, he did the same with on let's go back to Destroyer for just 2 seconds. He did that with Great Expectations.
Yeah.
He's got all the kids singing again. He's got the choir. He's got the orchestra. It's heavily swimming in reverb and echo. The guitar is really haunting.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Alice Cooper, Welcome to My Nightmare. The title track is not written. It doesn't have a writing credit for Ezrin, but his influence on the band is like a brick. It's hitting you. It's like stubbing your toe. It's like you feel and hear Bob Ezrin on just the songs that he's not on. And I will say that Ezrin's on over is like a writing credit on over half of the record.
Yeah.
And this is a theme with Ezrin. But the title track sounds like Bob Ezrin wrote the whole thing.
Yeah. And that album came out either the same year or just after Kiss Destroyer. So he was a hot producer at that time.
He was busy.
Big time.
Yeah, I'm just checking this. It's 75, so it was right before.
Right before, okay.
Kiss was busy blowing up.
Yeah, so he was a hot producer at that time. And here's another one just before those two albums. Aerosmith's "Get Your Wings" is Bob Ezrin.
Holy crap!
Yeah, so you think about so think about those song titles: "Lord of the Thighs."
Yeah,
I mean, all that slinky vibe, Seasons of Wither, yeah, another
Bob
one.
Ezrin. Yeah, that sounds like Bob Ezrin. Whether he has a writing credit on it or not is important. That's important.
Yeah, but he was a part of that record as well. He worked with Lou Reed. He worked with here's another one that I found to be kind of an oddball, but he did the Hanoi Rocks record, Two Steps from the Move. And Hanoi is not, I don't know why I'm saying this, but they're not the type of band I would expect to work with Bob Ezrin, because of all the things we just said. Bob Ezrin kind of has this reputation, and his catalog kind of comes from this place of very like intellectual and orchestrated and drama and cinematic and all these types of things that are the last things I think of when I think of Hanoi Rocks, right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of there's more edge to the band. They're a little more uppity. Their attitude is only different. Like the theater aspect is not necessarily there.
Exactly.
In the sound
in the songs.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
they're just a scrappy, dirty rock and roll band. And in fact, they sort of wear their simplicity and their raggedness on their sleeve, So I found that to be an odd pairing. But, the Hanoi was signed to a major label at that point in their career, and they were trying to turn them into big stars in America. And if you're trying to break a band in America, who are you going to call? Bob Ezrin, right?
There's very few people that you're going to call if you're probably influenced by, Deep Purple and Alice Cooper and Kiss.
Well,
and
there you go. Michael Monroe is a huge Alice Cooper fan, so it doesn't make. I mean, it makes perfect sense now. Maybe he might have made the call and said, "I'm looking for Bob Ezrin specifically because I'm a huge Alice Cooper fan," and the success he had with Kiss probably didn't hurt either. So. Now that I stop and think about it, and we're having this discussion, there's more connection there than I might have imagined at first glance. So
this again, and I'm repeating myself, this is again why this is completely valid for Talk Louder podcast. Because putting all of these, connecting these veins and Frankensteining. It's already Frankenstein together. It's got this flow. It is its own ecosystem that is Bob Ezrin.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I enjoy about this show is I think people are aware of this individually. Like they would look at each one of these albums we're talking about and they go, oh yeah, Bob Ezrin did that. But it's not until you have a conversation about the big picture and his entire catalog where the light bulb goes off in your head and you go, oh wow, yeah, this guy's been all over the place, you know? So I think people know the name Bob Ezrin and they associate it with this album and this album and this album. But when you speak about it in the larger, how they're all connected, and then you start making the connections like we just made with Michael Monroe and Alice Cooper, or Alice Cooper and Dick Wagner and Bob Ezrin, and you know how all these people are sort of intertwined. That's where, you know, the big light goes off and you think to yourself, wow, this guy has really contributed a lot to hard rock and popular music in general. Here's another one. I don't know much about this album, but Lou Reed, very important figure in rock history, of course, with the Velvet Underground and then as a solo artist. Bob Ezrin did the album Berlin, which I don't own, but it's considered a landmark album and influenced tons of people. That came out around this time that David Bowie and Lou Reed were hanging out. And
yeah,
so you could say, I mean, that album Berlin influenced later generations like Nine Inch Nails and Deftones and people like that came to prominence a generation or two later. But I can guarantee you Trent Reznor has that album in his collection at home, you know?
Yeah.
And again, there's a Dick Wagner connection there, I think. Lou Reed and Bob Ezrin.
Oh, because Dick Wagner played with Lou Reed.
Right, and then Alice Cooper, and he did some work on that Aerosmith album we were just talking about, Get Your Wings, as well. So
didn't Dick Wagner? He must have been friends with Bob or something anyway, because didn't Dick Wagner play on Destroyer?
I think he's uncredited on one song. I think he did Sweet Pain.
The solos on Sweet Pain.
That's right. Yeah.
The story I hear, it's just rumor, don't quote me on this, is that Ace was drunk and in a card game across town.
Yeah.
And said, they can just wait. And they were like, nope. Dick's standing right here. He's gonna plug in and play a song, and we're going out to eat after that. And you're gonna show up with your boots on, and we have left the building. So. And
the lights are gonna be out. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. But again, see, it's conversations like this where you connect all these dots and you realize how impactful Bob Ezrin was on so many bands and so many landmark albums. And still busy to this day. We were talking earlier at the top of this episode how he has been doing this for 40 some years. He just got done producing the brand new Deep Purple album that just came out either at the end of 2020 or early 2021. It's basically a brand new album. And that's a Bob Ezrin record. So he's still active to this day, very much so.
Well, it's a legend working with a legend.
Yeah, exactly.
He created legends, and now legends want him to work with them.
Yeah.
It's a strange that hurts my brain to say what I just said. I don't think I could say it again. I'm gonna just I'm spinning the wheel here.
Go for it.
Didn't he do a Jane's Addiction record?
Yes. Okay. So there you go.
Did he do the Jane's Addiction record?
No, he did. He did a record called Strays that was sort of, Jane's had their moment in the sun and then they kind of broke up, and Strays was kind of one of their comeback records, if for lack of a better term.
Okay.
It was pretty well received, and they toured it, and it brought them back into the headlines and everything. So it wasn't quietly swept under the rug. It made headlines and got the band back on stages and out on the road and all that. So and I want to say that Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers played on that album. And if he didn't play on the album, I want to say he did the tour. So there was sort of some added star power. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some added star power at that point when James kind of came back. But that just goes to prove the point I was just saying. You know, we talk about all these classic albums from the 70s that Bob was producing, but he also was very instrumental in 9 Inch Nails, Jane's Addiction. He did a Deftones record. So some of the names that were the kings of their genre or their era, if you will, bands that were all the rage, you know, during the 90s, early 2000s or whatever, Bob was still doing his thing at that point. So yeah, good on him. He's stayed very active and very prolific and continues to have a lot of success even to this day, like I said, with the brand new Deep Purple album.
That I think that it's safe to say that you know, why you know, I'm not a big fan of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and you know, I think that it does stand for something that's cool. I don't really like the idea of or even having to think about music fans getting into a big giant argument about who should be in there and who is not deserving to be in there.
Yeah.
And I have my own opinions about that. But you know, don't they nominate producers as well?
I think they do. I can't see how they wouldn't. I mean, I have to believe that George Martin is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is like,
yeah.
I don't, I've watched a couple of those specials where, you know, you watch, you know, inductions of artists into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they've been entertaining. But I always see like these montages of, you know, fallen rock heroes that they'll play, and it's always a touching moment, and I think that that's great. But I don't remember, you know, Roger Waters stepping up to the plate and going, I'm awarding, you know, and doing this hour-long speech about how kick-ass Bob Ezrin is, and handing him some kind of statue that says, Bob, you're badass.
Yeah.
You know, kind of a thing. But God damn it, they should.
I don't know.
Someone should. Can we make a Talk Louder award and just mail it to Bob? Because
sure.
I'll paper mache some shit real quick.
Exactly. It'll show up in his mailbox. So if he wants this junk mail, throw it in the trash.
This is hate mail. And I was like, no.
Yeah. No, it was made with love and appreciation. Yeah. But I don't know. The producers it's kind of like when you see one of those award shows that recognizes actors in movies. What you don't see on primetime is the foreign film, the supporting actors in a French film. You know, all that stuff gets done while the cameras are off. And so I have a hard time believing Bob Ezrin isn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And if he's not, he will be one day. But he's not going to be... I don't think is going to be in the spotlight like the artists themselves, because that's just not the role that producers play. Although I would argue in his case, and as you said, George Martin with the Beatles, and we did a whole episode on Martin Birch, those are guys that deserve to be stepping up to the podium if they're still alive and accepting their award and taking the credit they deserve.
That's right. Whether it be the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or the Talk Louder podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're not on the same mailing list, but I will tell you that I feel like Bob Ezrin is more than deserving with just like you could take the first three records we talked about, and then people would just their head is spinning already when you say, well, the two Alice's that we've given a lot of love, which would have been Nightmare and Love It to Death.
We gave about five Alice. We gave about five Alice Cooper records.
Yeah. But as well as Destroyer and The Wall.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there, people, what?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we're talking about Bob Ezrin. Who's that?
Exactly.
Like, he's all over your record collection.
Yeah, and you didn't even know it, or maybe you do, but you probably didn't piece together, like I said, the other pieces of the puzzle that bring this into a much bigger picture that, you know, sort of encompasses just how far his reach was over the decades and how many genres and artists he's worked with. Here's one I wanted to bring up. I wasn't aware of this one, but it has a connection to you in sort of an offhand way. The band Bonham. And
okay.
I know you know them because you toured with them.
Yeah. You're setting this up, but Bob Ezrin did that Bonham record?
He did a Bonham record. He did the one that came out in 1989, so that would have been the album they were touring, I believe, when you were touring with them.
That's right. So he did what I would call the Bonham record. If Bonham made a record after that one,
nobody heard it.
I'm trying to remember the single. I heard it every night for 3 months. And I can't remember right now.
Well, if you can't think.
We used to make fun of it because it rhymes with drink a brew. All I want to do.
It's something like "Stay with You" or something.
Yeah. It's a catchy song, and it was very good. And I wonder if Bob Ezrin wrote that.
I don't know, but he produced the record. It was called the Disregard for Timekeeping or something like that.
That's exactly right.
They did have a radio single. They had a video on MTV. Of course, the band takes its name from Jason Bonham, John Bonham's son. And yeah, I just wanted to bring that one up because that's maybe one of the lesser known albums in Bob Ezrin's long list of credits, but there is a connection to you, so I wanted to bring that one up.
Yeah, it's worthy of mentioning because of the Led Zeppelin connection with Jason Bonham. It's funny because you have Jason Bonham, and not to make it be about me, but Jason's singer was named Daniel McMaster.
Yeah, that's right.
Happens to be my last name. Now he's put an A between. It was MAC.
Right.
Which could have been my original spelling when my ancestors got off the boat.
Yeah.
So to speak. Right. Now, the fact that Bob Ezrin did this kind of like 80s hard rock band is interesting to me. Similar to how you originally felt when you were saying Bob Ezrin, Hanoi Rocks.
Exactly.
You're trying to stick those together, but then after you thought about it for a moment, you're like, oh yeah, well, yeah, okay, right.
Yeah. And in the case of the band Bonham, I would say that the connection was Bonham, you know, so Jason Bonham, probably very aware of who Bob Ezrin was, and Bob Ezrin, of course, very aware of who Jason Bonham is. So there's probably a mutual desire to work with each other and see if, hey, maybe we can make the planets align, you know, if we put our talents together.
Yeah, that Bonham single was called "Wait for You."
Wait for You, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
It was very soothing, and it was like if it could have won. I'm not comparing it to Led Zeppelin because Bonham was nothing like Led Zeppelin. It would have been on something later, like in my opinion, they weren't anything like Led Zeppelin.
Singer tried to sound like Robert Plant. He kind of had a Robert Plant.
A little bit. He had the hair.
Yeah.
And there is some kind of, you know, the swing that John Bonham did to Led Zeppelin. I think Jason did pretty well and emulated in some places. But just when you when you think about the band Bonham and what they were doing, and you saw the video, you didn't really think Led Zeppelin. Is my point.
Yeah.
But you know, it's important to know that that song was a single and pushed. Because it's just a feeling that I have, is that I think the label felt like it sounded like a later Led Zeppelin track.
Yeah.
Something that could have been off of the last studio record
In Through the Outdoor or something.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think they figured they were going to market the name Bonham, and sell some records on that that highlight. You got the son of the drummer from Led Zeppelin in this band, and you got the singer and that kind of sounded like Robert Plant or looked like him. So there was, make no mistake, there was somebody in some back rooms going, "Hey, we've got a winning formula here."
Yeah, and hence they were able to get Bob Ezrin.
Exactly.
But it's still interesting that Bob Ezrin had a sort of hand in something like Bonham that was going for more of like maybe Whitesnake light.
Yeah.
The British thing, and everything's blues based, and decent guitar player,
right.
decent singer, stuff like that.
Yeah.
What else?
Well,
I wanted to talk about this real quick. Our producer Jared played guitar in a band called Pariah that eventually released a record. Tom Zutaut from Geffen signed them, and they made a great rock and roll record called Tamaka Killingbird.
Yeah.
And I believe Tom Werman produced that. But the 6 degrees of separation here, we're talking about Bob Ezrin in this episode of Talk Louder, is this. Jared had just joined Pariah. It was around 89, which would have been right around the time that Bob was doing or had just wrapped on the Bonham record. Yeah. In the timeline here. So I'm not sure what the story is about why or how Bob Ezrin was in Austin, Texas, but Jared and his band came to Austin and had dinner. Here, let me back up a little bit. Pariah, the band had just signed with management. And their management was able to arrange a meeting when management realized how big of like Kiss fans and Alice Cooper fans the guys in Pariah were, and he was able to get Bob to, come and have dinner with them and just hang out, and they were the band was writing at the time, so I'm sure that Jared and everybody was like, man, we need to write a record, we need songs, and Bob Ezrin, let's go pick his brain. And so Kevin Womack, the band's new manager, set it up. And they came to Austin, and they went to Pecan Street Cafe down on 6th Street.
Yep.
And had fucking dinner with legendary Bob Ezrin in 1989. And that's just amazing because it's like he was the main course. They were able to just get a little in there and pick his brain a little bit, and then they probably went home and made a record. They didn't, use him as a producer or anything, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is they
got to break bread with Bob Ezrin.
That's right. That'll be the title of Jared's book, Breaking Bread
with Bob Ezrin. And I was going to say, when we nominate Bob Ezrin for the Talk Louder Hall of Fame, we're going to name drop Jared to get Bob to.
He'll be like, who? Bob will be like, who?
and then when he realizes he's got to pay his own airfare, he's going to be like, I'm out. These clowns, forget it.
Oh, that's awesome. A little sidebar. This is I'm not bagging on Jared at all, but the story doesn't end very well on the ride back. They were still living in the band Pariah in Jared's him and his guys, they were still living in San Antonio at the time.
Yes, right.
And on the way back home, Jared tells me that he was having a lot of abdominal pain, and it ended up being appendicitis. So he had to, that night or the next morning in the wee hours, he went to the hospital.
Man,
had his appendix taken out. Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
He has dinner with Bob Ezrin and then spends the drive home to San Antonio curled up in the back seat of a car.
I remember Pecan Street having really good food. It's not the food. It's just Jared's feeling appendix. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's touch on one more name as it relates to Bob Ezrin. And you know more about this artist than I do, and I'm not sure how strong the connection is, but I want to say you were mentioning in an earlier conversation that there's a tie between Bob Ezrin and Max Webster out of Canada. Is that right?
So I didn't know this until I did a little bit of research. The demos of Canadian, because surely we've mentioned that Bob is Canadian, Toronto.
Oh, right.
So Max Webster is this very interesting, a little odd rock band out of same area. Used to go on tour with Rush all the time. Did early 70s tours. Once Rush was able to headline in theaters and up to around 2,000 and 3,000 seater Coliseum type places, they would seem to always take out Max Webster. Well, I found out today, Bob Ezrin, he recorded their demos. Like he recorded Max Webster, like when he was just a fledgling, just hanging out, rock and roll, like I'm going to be a producer someday kind of guys, from what I could tell from my research, which I just think is a very interesting connection, because Max Webster, I mean, I've covered Max Webster songs before. On later releases, probably not anything that, I don't know. Bob Ezrin could have been that 6 Degrees of Separation that I had by songs I covered by Max Webster. That song could have been on a demo that Bob Ezrin recorded. Who knows?
Who knows? But it makes sense. They're both from Canada. So it would make sense that an aspiring producer would cross paths with an aspiring musician, and they would get together at an early point in each of their careers and help each other out a little bit.
Certainly Bob Ezrin has had a hand in so many Canadian artists just by demographics. That we don't know about, that are not public information, that are not documented very well anyway. Maybe fine print.
Well, we've only touched on a handful of Bob Ezrin's credits, definitely some of his bigger ones, because I think that it's fair to say his biggest album credits are in the hard rock / heavy metal genre, if you will. Alice Cooper, Kiss, Pink Floyd. But if you look him up, his long list of albums that he's associated with goes on and on and on. So we could never capture it all here, but we definitely hit on the highlights tonight. So good on Bob. He's definitely contributed to my record collection, and I'm happy he did, because some of the albums that he's done are mainstays in my listening and in my record collection.
He helped warp my young mind.
And we're always grateful for that.
many ways. Thank you, Bob.
Yes, thank you, Bob. And we'll send you out that invite to Austin to accept your Talk Louder award. I know you're a pretty avid movie watcher. So this being a podcast about music, what is your favorite music-based movie, whether it's a documentary or a concert film or some sort of comedy that has a music theme or stars a music artist, that's what I'm throwing at you. What do you have that fits that bill?
My knee-jerk reaction would be every like rocker headbanger's knee-jerk reaction, and that would be Spinal Tap.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah.
The I feel like the research Rob Reiner did on that film probably had to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And made the writing sessions for the movie like really great times.
Yeah.
I feel like Iron Maiden and Saxon were a big play in all of the things that were being parodied throughout the movie, and all of those things have happened. In Rob Halford's book, he talks about him and Glenn Tipton go to the movie theater on a day off to watch, the year that it came out when it was a new movie in the theater, and they're in there just laughing their balls off and enjoying the hell out of it, and they're looking at each other like, oh shit, that part's about us,
Yeah.
just the clothes and just whatever, because anyone who's ever been in a band, all of that shit has happened to them. Like you take a wrong turn, you can't find the stage.
Yeah.
You get stopped at the airport for something inappropriate or something else. I mean, I've got stories where, similar things have happened. I didn't have a squash in my pants wrapped in tinfoil, but, I had a steer skull in my luggage that the drug dogs sniffed out, and the undercovers pulled me over and said, can you tell us why the drug dogs would sniff out your bag? And I said, yeah, because I have a dead cow in there. That's the, you can ask me about that later.
Yeah.
But stuff like that could have been in Spinal Tap. You see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
That's probably my knee jerk, but on a serious note,
it's a great answer. It's so obvious. It's so obvious I didn't even think about it, but yeah, great movie and great answer.
Another side of the serious side of me, because I am quite serious. It doesn't seem like it all the time, but the people that know me, they know that I really do give a shit about, and I'm very proud of what I do, and it's important to me, and it's not just writing songs about my balls. I write all kinds of stuff that's heartfelt. And so the fact, on that note, in Rob Halford's book, Confession, is it that? Yeah, Confess. Sorry, Confess. I've been getting that title wrong. Close enough, right? Confess. Yeah. Rob Halford, Confess. Everyone should get it. Everyone should buy the book and read it. It's if you like rock and roll, it's a great read. So him and Glenn are in the theater watching Spinal Tap, having a great time, just like seeing these moments and realizing, oh shit, he got that from us,
Yeah.
And there only is just a few other in attendance at this showing, and they're like long-haired hard rock headbangers, and they're getting up in the middle of the film saying, "Fuck this, man! They're making fun of my shit, man! They're making fun of me and stuff," and they're getting mad and they're walking out.
Yeah,
and that made Glenn and Rob laugh harder. Because they don't really get that it's a parody. They think that it's it's like making fun of someone's livelihood.
Right.
It's not that at all. It's not making fun of what you do for a living. It's not making fun of the kind of music that you like.
Yeah.
It's making fun of the bands that have had that sort of those things be mishap, and like you're left looking stupid because it happens,
But you would only understand that and fully appreciate it if you're in a band because it's happened to you.
The embarrassing moments are all there that we can relate to. On the serious side, there are like, rock docs, Beyond the Lighted Stage, the Rush movie is so good. It
Yeah, that was
is
good.
so good. It might be my favorite. But the recent and I've mentioned this, the new Bee Gees one,
Yeah,
the Gordon Lightfoot have talked about on Talk Louder before.
yeah,
Um, that's almost like another shot of rock and roll.
it is. Yeah, yeah. But Spinal Tap, that's a great answer, and it's so obvious that when I asked the question, I didn't even have it on the top of my mind. So I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm just just hearing you talk about it and recalling all those scenes in the movie just has me laughing because it's such a classic. It's just it's
Well,
awesome.
yeah, and we could do a whole show on that movie. We could do
Yeah,
a Talk Louder podcast on the movie.
yeah,
But it does make me think about music related films, and you mentioned um, The Sound of Metal, that new thing, and just that's a fictional thing that I think that you know deserve to be talked about because it kind of you can relate to it and people that can relate to it. So
yeah,
um
yeah.
let's move on. Shot of rock and roll for you.
Yes.
This is related to our show today, Bob Ezrin related. What is your favorite deep cut? I mean, in my book, they're all deep cuts. So, the world is yours, Tony Montana. Uh, what is your favorite deep cut off of Kiss the Elder?
Oh man.
I'm making you use your brain now.
Yeah. And wow. So I have to confess right off the bat that I have never fully absorbed and never owned The Elder. So I don't know the album well enough to comment on deep
Well,
tracks.
you
Eh,
know what about the ones you do know?
The ones I do know. So if the question turns into what's my favorite song off The Elder,
Let it be that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've always liked just because I think I mentioned before, it's the most Kiss sounding song on that record.
Yeah, it's kind of
it's
the
a,
obvious one.
it's a good, solid rock and roll Kiss type song. But I remember A World Without Heroes when it came out,
That song
and
there is very Bob Ezrin.
I liked it. I thought it was kind of an oddball for Kiss. I mean, especially at that point in their career. And if you saw the video, Ace Frehley's playing an acoustic guitar. They all cut their hair. Gene Simmons is shedding a tear at the end of the video. It's very un-Kiss. I'm used to Kiss being the fire-breathing monsters and these Goliaths and rock and roll all night and party every day type of thing.
Yeah,
So it was,
tender moment, surprise.
yeah, exactly.
Much like Alice Cooper with Only Women Bleed,
Yeah, yeah.
and just those I Never Cry and things
Yep.
like that. Those are Ezrin influenced things.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't realize. But I'm with you. I want there to be fire and blood or it ain't rock and roll.
Yeah. But there's moments of it on that album. I guess I don't know all the moments on that album because I have to full confession here. I have never studied that album or absorbed it, and I couldn't tell you all the tracks on it. It was one of those albums. By the time it came out, I was kind of done with Kiss, and then everything I read about it immediately at the time was, oh my God, what are they doing? And I was like, okay, I made the right decision. That album's not worth my time. And I probably owe it to Kiss because I'm such a huge Kiss fan. I probably owe it to them and to myself to go back and give it another listen and see if it's as bad as it was, as history seems to remember it as. But to answer your question, I'm going to go with the song just because it's the most Kiss sounding song that I'm aware of on that record.
Okay, that's fair. I like how you threw it out the window and then hit the brakes and backed up and opened the door.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Good for you. Good choice.
Yeah.
Choice.
All right. Well, I think we did a pretty good salute to Bob Ezrin. I hope he's listening, and I hope he's proud of the fact that we called him out and dedicated a show to him. Because
I doubt he's listening, but I think that he would probably smile at least a little bit if he heard that a couple of knuckleheads really sort of cherished his work and molded our minds and gave us a reason and gave everyone a reason. Holy crap.
Yeah. What a long list of outstanding credits, right?
Well, if you like rock and roll and you don't have the record, at least 2 or 3 of the records we mentioned in this record, you need a spanking.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. Something's wrong with your rock and roll brain. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Well, let's call it and save some more discussion for the next time. I've enjoyed this one. Bob Ezrin, great producer who's touched my life, touched your life, touched the lives of a lot of people listening through his work with some of our favorite bands and his work on some of our favorite albums. So with that, we'll sign off and salute you, Bob Ezrin. I'm Metal Dave here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster. We thank you all for listening to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast.